Meet Kotaki Yumeji, a normal high school boy just trying to do his best to get through classes and not draw too much attention to himself. Although that last part is especially hard when the girl he sits next to is positively giant. Literally. Umine Shari is 8 meters tall. She and Yume-kun have been friends since childhood. The last time they met, she was significantly smaller. Now, she's practically a celebrity, and even has the government issuing her custom-made supplies. When she recently transferred to his school, Yumeji was assigned to act as her official helper. His job mostly consists of stopping her from nearly killing people when she drops things and trying to get her to act a little more modest, which is particularly difficult, as Shari doesn't have a whole lot of shame, and she definitely underestimates the determination of teenage boys. Even while she's chatting with Yumeji, they gather to peep under her skirt. For some reason, this giant idiot decides to lift it up and show them her Spanx, and only makes them happier when she turns around to show her butt. When they start getting rowdy, she asks Yumeji to help, so he takes her phone and jumps into the crowd, using the flash to chase them all away. Shari is shocked he would jump from a building to help her, but he brushes it off, saying anyone would have done the same. I don't know about that, buddy. She grabs him and holds him close so that she can thank him properly, unaware that Yumeji's heart is racing a mile a minute. Caught up in the moment, he promises to protect her from here on out, which makes her so flustered that she drops him by accident. If anyone needs protecting, it's going to be Yumeji. The next day, Shari asks if they can have lunch together. Yumeji tries to resist, but she teases him, poking her head through the window and even trying to grab him. He manages to break free and escape, but he gets hardly a moment to himself before she's found him again, using cars as roller skates to whip around the campus. She reaches in to grab him, but again, Yume-kun is too fast. He ends up resorting to desperate measures and hiding inside the men's room, but even that can't stop shameless Shari. Peeping inside the urinals, literally climbing up the school walls, there's nothing this girl won't do to track him down. But this time when she reaches in, Yumeji notices all the band-aids on her fingers. So he stops running away and agrees to sit and have lunch with her on the rooftop. She even made him a little bento too and tried to write his name with nori. Shari just has her usual government-issued one, and when Yumeji realizes she probably used too many ingredients on trial runs of his, he offers to share the one she made him, which is sweet and all, but must be kind of pointless. Isn't that sort of like ant food to her? Shari still manages to turn it into an opportunity for romance and asks him to feed her since she can't use tiny chopsticks. Even though he's super embarrassed, Yumeji agrees just this once, and just as you'd expect, the food is too small to taste. Well, I guess it's the gesture that counts, right? The next morning, Yumeji is dreaming of their childhood when he is rudely interrupted by Shari, poking her head and a very large chest through the window. Obviously, that's a kind of terrifying sight to wake up to, so Yumeji isn't particularly happy to see her, but she wants to walk to school with him just like they used to when they were kids. So Yume-kun reluctantly gets dressed and climbs up on her shoulder, which is kinda cool. Like any teenage boy would, he starts pretending that she's some giant robot he gets to ride around the city. On their way, they spot an old lady struggling to cross the road, so Shari casually picks up the car in her way. She yells at the driver, giving them the fright of her life while the granny crosses safely. It looks like she does this pretty often, since the old lady knew her well. In fact, Shari helps just about everyone she sees, and all the pedestrians are super friendly towards her. It makes Yumeji realize there might be more to his giant crush than meets the eye. But her heroism is put to the test when a thief rides by on a motorcycle with some lady's purse. Shari leaps into action, shoving Yumeji between her breasts for safekeeping and starts sprinting towards the thief. In no time, she's cut him off, retrieved the purse and sent the thief off with the cops. By now, they're pretty late for school, but Shari needs a little rest after saving half the town, so they take a break to cool off. Yumeji asks if she does that sort of thing every day, but Shari says it's no big deal. With her height, she can just see more things than she used to when she was smaller, and she can't ignore people who need help. The conversation turns when she remembers what it was like when they were younger, and she always needed Yumeji's help. She admits that even though she prefers her bigger self, she still has always liked being protected by him, and that hasn't changed now. In a moment of cuteness, she asks him to stroke her hair like when they were younger. The poor guy is literally shaking with the effort of acting casual, but lucky for him, Shari was only kidding. Little does he know, she was blushing just as hard as him. Back at school, Shari is the star of the track and field class in PE. I mean, it can't be that hard when your legs are the length of 3 normal people. Yumeji is watching her from the field, so distracted that he doesn't even notice when the ball flies over and smacks him in the face. Shari laughs at him for it, and later tells him she got first place in the 50-meter dash. When Yumeji refuses to give her compliments, he trips up, accidentally letting slip that he only got hit because he was looking at her. Chief simp behavior if you ask me. While the two are reminiscing on the games they played as kids, Shari mentions that she was always better at physical activities and snatches his towel, teasing him to climb up and grab it out of her hands. It's all fun and games until Yumeji actually takes the bait and starts to climb her, at which point Shari suddenly realizes that she's still all sweaty from PE. He's already at her shoulder when she starts to panic, rolling around to try and get him off before eventually giving up the towel. When she admits she was worried about being smelly, Yumiji reassures her that he couldn't care less. If anything, it's a sign she was working hard, so he congratulates her on her first place finish with a smile that makes her blush. The next day in class, Shiori is in her usual seat, which is basically just outside in the courtyard when it starts to rain. Luckily, she's been issued a department-supplied custom room that comes out at the click of a button. But the rain doesn't let up when school is out, and that private roof isn't exactly portable. She gets all flirty, suggesting to Yume-kun that they share an umbrella, even though I don't think it could cover more than 3 hairs on her head. But hiding from the rain reminds her of when they were younger. When they'd play in the park, they would hide from the rain in the playground, just to run home all muddy anyway. After reminiscing for a while, the rain lets up a little, so Shiori takes off her cardigan to use a makeshift umbrella, offering her helper a lift home. Maybe there are some perks to this job after all. The sun comes out while they're on their way home, and it makes Shiori a little embarrassed since she got so ahead of herself, and thinks that makes her seem childish and silly. But Yumiji reassures her that she's still very grown up and alluring, at least to him. And then he ruins the moment, acting like a kid and calling her a human roller coaster. So she pays him back by bringing out her skirt over his head. Now that he's soaking wet, Yumiji has an excuse to visit Shuri's government-issued house for the first time, since he needs to dry off. And boy is it huge. Everything was made custom for Shiori, so the whole house is giant-sized. It makes Yumiji look all teeny-tiny by comparison. The only thing that's normal-sized are the photos of Shiori's family and friends from before she got so big. One of them is face down, but when Yumiji tries to flip it up, she hurries him off to the bath. A giant-sized bath could be pretty dangerous for a normal human, so Shiori fills up a little bowl with hot water for him instead. After accidentally catching a glimpse of her underwear, he ends up soaking in the tub with a pretty serious head injury. While she's washing up, Shiori uses her massive hairdryer to dry off his clothes, meaning she doesn't have time to dry her own hair. So, Yumiji scolds her, saying she shouldn't come down with a cold or else he'll have to be her helper at home as well as at school. So he helps her dry her hair with a towel instead, like a real gentleman. Back at school, Shiori has a new pair of glasses. She doesn't have bad eyesight or anything, she just really wanted to get in the mood for studying, and apparently wearing glasses is all you need. She put on a good show, but minutes into her first lesson, Shiori is snoozing at her desk. Her loyal helper wakes her up and then gets told off for yelling. When their teacher asks him to answer the question he just asked, Shiori admits she was snoozing, thinking he didn't hear the question. I guess she didn't realize that Yumiji studies hard enough he doesn't need her help. After causing a fuss about how cool he was, Shiori is called on next to read for the class, accidentally interrupting the class upstairs when she tries to stand up. Continuing her streak of being a bit thick, in the next period she forgets her book and has to use a magnifying glass to help her read from Yumiji's. Although, it's also a pretty convenient excuse to sit super close together. I wonder if she planned it that way. Fortunately, they don't have to stay that way for long, just because the magnifying glass makes his book catch fire, and after that, she just goes back to sleep. Because he's head over heels for her, Yumiji takes the opportunity to stare at her, so it's no surprise he gets caught when she blinks. Really, these two are both just idiots in love. When Shiori hears about a new crepe shop nearby, she ropes Yumiji into tagging along on a weekend expedition to the shopping center. They meet up in their casual clothes. Shiori is already determined to eat as much as she can, and since the government is covering all her expenses, she can go off and do pretty much whatever she likes. And it's a good thing too. Since the crepe store doesn't exactly make giant-sized desserts, they have to buy 10 portions just to give her an idea of what they actually taste like. Yumiji gets one too, and makes the mistake of ordering a different flavor. Immediately, Shiori wants to take a bite, and not of her own portion, she wants to eat from his. Reluctantly, Yumiji offers her the crepe and has the nerve to act surprised when she eats it all in one go. Like, yeah, that was obviously gonna happen, buddy. He gets over it pretty quick, and soon they're spending their afternoon perusing all the food stalls. When they sit down for a break, poor Yumiji gets the fright of his life when Shiori practically resets his spine with a canned drink. Even though he suffered pretty physically today, Shiori is grateful he came with her. Thanks to him, she got to try all sorts of food she wouldn't normally get to. Life must be kinda tough when you have to stick to government-issued snacks. Though she does have a funny way of showing her gratitude. She grabs the can and takes a sip, for real this time, passing it back with a sly smile. Suddenly, Yumiji understands why she's been asking to try his food so much. She was trying to set up an indirect kiss this whole time. Yumiji finds himself at a crossroads, kind of annoyed that he's been conned, but in the end, he gives in, taking barely a sip from the can before Shiori's making things weird again. While having lunch with her friends at school, Shiori starts quizzing the girls on what kind of clothes boys like to see girls in. Hina and Tsukino immediately suspect that she's trying to show off to someone, but Shiori explains that she's pretty limited in what she gets to wear, since the department makes all her clothes. So, she's been thinking of asking for a new set, and wants to know what guys find cute. Hina tells her she's got a great body, so she'd look good in everything. They offer a lot of different options, but in the end, it's Yumiji's opinion that she really needs. So, it's pretty convenient when he appears on the rooftop, looking for a textbook she borrowed. Not noticing his arrival, Shiori freaks out and demolishes half the rooftop when she turns around to find Yumiji standing there. Building up all her courage, she asks him the question. After thinking for a minute, Yumiji says the clothes she wore when they went shopping together looked good on her. In fact, he'd like to see that outfit again. Damn Yumiji, you're smoother than I thought. After all the drama of the outfits, Shari decides that she needs Yumiji on her stomach to help her strength training. She's trying to diet and lose weight since she feels like she's not getting enough exercise lately. I guess her appetite has been kind of insane in the last few weeks, but having her examine her body and all the parts that have gotten a little rounder makes Yumiji very uncomfortable. He tells her she looks fine just the way she is, but Shari won't be swayed until her stomach starts growling in the middle of planking. Then she's pretty quick to fold. When Yumiji finds out she's been skipping meals, he busts out the big guns, a whole box of melon pan, made especially for Shari by the lady at the school store. She doesn't give in, but she does give back. Shari knocks down Yumi-kun to the ground and teases him, saying he smells kind of tasty and trapping him beneath her. Just before she's about to take a big old bite of him, Yumiji apologizes for trying to ruin her diet and she bursts out laughing. Together, they get through the box of melon pan, and she promises to be more careful with her body from now on. And considering the sheer size of her, she really should. Imagine what might happen if she fainted. In the middle of class, Shari asks Yumiji to help her study because she's worried she'll fail the next test. Once school is out, they head to the gym, which is conveniently empty. Unfortunately, that means Shari can mess around to her heart's content, which is not why they came. Once she's done showing her underwear to half the world, Yumiji finally gets her on the ground, but she's still not interested in working. Being able to lie down isn't something she gets to do when she's not at home, so of course she's going to enjoy the space. But she also bought a whole bag of snacks and spends all her time rolling around, making faces, and fetching balls from the ceiling, literally anything except for studying. At this point, she's gotta be a distraction for Yumiji too. So, Yumiji switches tactics. He promises to reward her if she can get a 50 or higher on the next test, but if she fails, he'll organize a punishment for her instead. That seems to be motivation enough to get her going, so she studies hard with no distractions this time. And when the test comes back, they're all over 50. Looks like Yumiji isn't such a bad tutor after all. Now comes time for her reward. As a treat, her guru bought her a few packs of chips that she's been really into lately, which is sweet, but not exactly going to fill her up. In fact, when Yumiji reveals that the punishment was an overnight study camp at her place, she starts wishing she had failed instead. While laying in bed back at her place, Shari comes up with another of her genius plans to get some romance going between her and Yumiji. This time, she wants to share headphones, which seems pretty much impossible considering their ears are completely different sizes, but I'm sure that won't stop Shari. Once class is out for the day, she decides to enact her plan with the strategy of being so fast and forward that he simply can't refuse. With a hilariously unnatural segue, Shari offers him one of her giant earbuds to listen to her favorite song, and immediately realizes that this isn't going to work out quite like she was hoping. It also doesn't bring them any closer, since it's, a giant pair of earphones. So instead, she asks Yumiji to use his earphones so that he can hear the kind of stuff she's into. Yet again, her plan fails when Yume-chan pulls out an AirPod, which, again, gives them no excuse to get close at all. But the moment isn't totally ruined. The song Yumiji plays her is one from their childhood, the theme song to an anime that they watched together. He even pulls up the video for them to watch together. So, the strategy kind of worked out in the end anyway. Although, Shari still went to the effort of having the government make her a custom set of headphones so they can share a pair. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if someone should be concerned about this use of taxpayers' money. But one thing's for sure, Shari will never stop inventing attempts to bring her closer to her helper Yumi-chan. The next day, Shari's friends Hina and Tsukino come over to her house to hang out. Her friends were planning to cut her hair and teach her about makeup. Hina and Tsukino were amazed by how huge and spacey Shari's home was. Hina immediately went straight to Shari's huge bed. Tsukino called out to her and told her that it was rude to go straight for the bed without the owner's permission, but Shari told them that it was fine and that they should feel at home. Tsukino was jealous of Shari living alone in high school. She has a big family, which could be irritating sometimes since no one has ever left her alone. Hina asked Shari if she ever gets lonely living all by herself while still in high school. Shari explained that she will still be able to meet her family every time she went out, and she has her friends and also met Yumiji, so she doesn't really feel lonely. When Shari mentioned Yumiji's name, the girls giggled and teased her. After that, they sat down and had some tea. The girls told Shari how good the tea was. Speaking of tea, Shari mentioned that she had served Yumiji tea before as well. The girls started teasing her again. In Shari's defense, Yumiji was just over at her house to get dried off because his clothes got soaked in the rain. Soon after, they decided to start cutting Shari's hair and doing her makeup. She only wanted a little trim, cutting off 2 to 3 centimeters from the tips. A trim that short wouldn't make a lot of changes, so Hina suggested cutting 50 centimeters off of Shari's hair. Hina was in charge of cutting Shari's hair while Tsukino was doing her makeup. Hina's sister was a hairstylist, so she eventually got used to cutting other people's hair as well after being her sister's guinea pig. Tsukino showered Shari with compliments as she was doing her makeup. Shari's skin was smooth and pretty. She had big eyes and long lashes, which Tsukino was jealous of. After a while, the girls finished Shari's makeover. She then thanked her friends right after. She looked beautiful in her new look, which was styled by Hina and Tsukino. While they were at it, they took pictures and sent them to each other. While looking through the pictures, Hina realized that she forgot to trim a part of Shieri's hair, so she took the scissors and proceeded to cut the front part of her hair. Tsukino was still looking through the pictures while Hina and Shieri were doing their own business. When Tsukino said that they would send the pictures to Yumiji, Shieri immediately panicked. Shieri suddenly moved as Hina was still cutting her hair, so her hair was accidentally snipped short. She was more worried about Yumiji seeing her picture because it was too embarrassing for her. The following day at school, Shieri was slightly conscious of her new look. Yumiji noticed that she got a haircut and complimented her. Her cheeks turned red and her new look was all thanks to Hina and Tsukino. Shieri had an accident. Her butt was stuck. Not long after, Yumiji realized that he was in trouble. A few hours prior to the incident, Shieri called out Yumiji and told him that she wanted to go to the classroom. It was sudden, so Yumiji was curious about what that was about. Shieri didn't have a big reason or anything, she was still a high school girl. The classroom had a teenage year's allure to it, and Shieri liked the smell of the classroom. After school was perfect since no one else was around. Yumiji helped Shieri look for a place big enough for her to go. They found an entrance that had shoe racks so they could use the hallway to get in. Shieri noticed that Yumiji was wearing a jersey and was holding a mop. He then told her that he had cleaned up the floor so she wouldn't get dirty crawling. Without further ado, Shieri started crawling and was fortunately able to go inside the school premises without a hitch. Although she felt like she was doing something bad as she started army crawling through the empty hallway, she was also having fun. Yumiji assured her that there was nothing bad about what she was doing since she was a student, as long as nothing got broken. When they reached the narrow stairs, Shieri's back started to hurt, but she was able to manage it since she was flexible. Soon after, they finally reached their classroom. When Shieri was about to go inside, that was when the incident occurred. At the present time, Shieri's body was halfway inside the classroom when her butt hit a snag. Her body was too big to fit through the door of the classroom. There was no other way around it. She was left with no choice but to order Yumiji to push her buttocks. Yumiji was hesitant at first because there was no way he could do that to Shieri. Although it was embarrassing for both of them, that was the only way for her to go inside, so they really needed to do it. Fortunately, they made it, and Shieri was able to go inside the classroom. When they both got inside the classroom, they took a rest for a while. That was Shieri's first time inside their classroom. Even though she can normally smell the classroom scent from the window, being outside or inside definitely makes a difference. Afterwards, Shieri thanked Yumiji for cleaning so she wouldn't get dirty. She couldn't help but wonder why he went so far. Before Yumiji could respond to Shieri, he accidentally fell asleep. Shieri saw Yumiji taking out the class trash, so she tried to scare him. He didn't show any reaction though, because he could tell that it was her. She was cleaning around the place even though the teacher instructed her to clean only around her desk. Shieri greeted the janitor as he approached them and told him that she had finished the usual sweeping. Shieri had taken over the work from the janitor. It was no surprise since she just liked helping others. Afterwards, Yumiji decided to gather up the pruned branches. He got scratched on one of the branches and started bleeding. Shieri got worried and offered to take him to the infirmary, but he declined. For Yumiji, it was just nothing. He just needed to rinse it nicely since it was a slight scratch. Before Yumiji could do anything, Shieri snatched him and then proceeded to treat his wound by herself as a reward for always helping her out. She took out a first aid kit and started to disinfect his wound. The bandage was too big for Yumiji's small hands. For some reason, he was embarrassed, which Shieri found weird since it was just some first aid, nothing to be embarrassed about. Shortly after, Shieri's friends were looking for her as they called out her name. She was startled and immediately hid Yumiji on her chest like it was a reflex. Afraid Hina and Tsukino would tease her if they were seen together, she didn't show up for her friends. As Hina and Tsukino were still looking for Shieri, the janitor noticed them and told them that Shieri had already left. When the girls left, Mr. Janitor and Shieri gave each other a thumbs up, like they had a secret to share together. On a random school day, Hina shared with the girls that she found Pseudo pretty cool. Shieri asked her if that kind of guy was her type, and she didn't deny it. Pseudo's got an adult composure, which is exactly her type. He was pretty popular among girls as well. Tsukino was opposed since just last month, Hina was chasing after a different man. Hina called Yumiji to back her up about Pseudo being a hottie. Yumiji admitted that Pseudo had a pretty fit body for a Japanese history teacher, the kind of man he aimed to be. She was thrilled with Yumiji's thoughts about Pseudo and complimented him on having a good eye. Moments later, Pseudo approached their group and asked Shieri for a favor. A teacher crashed into a ditch as she avoided a cat that jumped out, so he asked Shieri to pick up the car and move it. After that, Pseudo apologized because he felt bad for asking a student for a favor. It was nothing for Shieri since she had always loved to help people. Yumiji noticed Pseudo's big, strong arms and told him that he could easily push lighter vehicles with those arms. Yumiji even requested that Pseudo show him more of his proud muscles so he could look up to it. Pseudo was pretty confident in arm wrestling since he was lifting weights. Yumiji, Hina, and Tsukino were all in awe of his strong arms after he flexed them. The three of them were also invested in Pseudo's muscles that they wanted to touch and feel the hardness and thickness of his muscles. While they were at it, Hina even invited Shieri to join and feel Pseudo's muscles as well. However, Shieri took out her arm and showed all of them how bigger and thicker her arms were. Shari even told them to feel her muscles. Without any delay, Hina and Tsukino felt her arms. Hina even teased them to check the smoothness of her breasts while they were at it. While the girls were occupied, Sudo and Yumiji took the opportunity to leave. However, Shari noticed them before they could go far away. Shari called them and offered Sudo a match in arm wrestling with her while carrying Hina and Tsukino in both of their hands. Moments later, after how many rounds? Sudo hadn't had a single chance to defeat Shari. He was giving his best while Shari didn't even shed a little bit of sweat. Shari was fully trying to show off how strong she was. From that day on, Sudo became Shari's rival. A car suddenly arrived in front of Shari's house. A pretty blonde girl was driving it. She then went inside the house and found her peacefully sleeping. She climbed on Shari's body and woke her up since it was already 9 in the morning. Shari was surprised when she woke up to someone standing on her chest. It was her sister, Umine Ringo. Surprised by her sister's sudden appearance, Shari asked her sister what she was doing in her house. Umine just wanted to check up on her little sister and let herself in with a spare key. No matter how big Shari has grown, she is still a kid after all. Their parents were also worried about how she was doing since she was living all by herself. Shari told her sister that she could have just called her instead, but that would defeat the point of her visit. From then on, it was time for Umine's "Are you living properly or not?" surprise check. Umine would be happy for them to live together just like they had before. Although she proposed to live alone because she didn't want to be a bother, she couldn't help but feel lonely ever since Shari was gone. With that said, she started to check every single corner of Shari's house. Umine told Shari that if she had been leading a deprived lifestyle, she would be coming back to Umine. Starting off with Shari's bedroom, Umine noticed that she had been properly vacuuming since there was no dust. On top of her desk was a cluttered mess, but it was normal. However, Umine criticized the mountain of clothes that was on the floor. She reminded Shari to be sure to put her clothes in the hamper and not on the floor. Next up was the kitchen. There were a few dishes soaked in water, but aside from that, everything else was good. Shari usually just settles for the department's microwave meals. She apparently had to eat a ton to sustain the kind of body she has, although there would be no problem if she ate food made for her. Shari's bathroom was also perfectly clean, which was no fun for Umine. While Umine was on the toilet, she felt the call of nature, but before she could do anything, Shari scolded her to go to the normal-sized toilet instead. As Umine was on her way out, she passed by Shari's big bra and even smelled it. She got scolded again for the second time by her little sister, so she finally went to the toilet. After a while of checking Shari's house, she passed Umine's little test. She would inform their parents that she would be fine to continue living on her own. Umine wanted to take care of her little sister, but it seemed like she already had a boyfriend's helper. She was talking about Yumiji. Umine then asked if they had already kissed, but Shari immediately said it was nothing like that with Yumiji. She was so defensive, but it was pretty obvious that her face was blushing. Not long after, Shari wondered how her sister knew about the helper thing when she never even told her about it. Umine knew everything. After all, she was none other than Shari's big sister. Before she forgot, Umine decided that she would be staying over for the night without informing her sister beforehand. Umine's sudden visit to Shari's house was a surprise, and she even decided to stay overnight. During dinner, Umine cooked for the two of them. Ever since Shari has grown so big and begun living on her own, her older sister has been worried about her. Despite Umine's demure looks, she was a bit of an oddball with many hobbies and a lot of vitality. Also, the car she owned was really fancy. Umine has gotten better at cooking. They had hamburgers for dinner, the same ones that their mom used to make. Umine had their mom teach her, which is why she cooked so well. While eating, they caught up on each other's lives. Umine gives Shari the advice that if she was going to snatch up Yumiji, she needed to win his stomach by cooking delicious meals. It has been so long since Umine saw Yumiji, and she would like to meet him again. Shari asked about how things were going for her big sister. There was nothing special going on in Umine's life. She crumpled the can of alcohol that she was drinking as she started to vent about how much of a masher men are. Guys only cared about her looks and not her personality. They only liked her and found her beautiful when she was quiet, which made her furious. Shortly after, Shari realized that her sister was already drunk and remembered that she was a bad drunk. Not long after, Umine fell asleep on the table, so Shari decided to take a bath instead. Yumiji filled her thoughts while she was relaxing in the bathtub. Shari was still in denial about her feelings for Yumiji. She was bothered by the thought that having Yumiji as her boyfriend would be okay since she has gotten so big at the moment. However, Shari couldn't hide the fact that she liked him. While in the middle of her thoughts, Umine suddenly entered the bathroom in her undergarments. Umine told her sister that whatever was bothering Shari was not something to fret over. Her feelings for Yumiji hadn't changed since she transferred. Umine was so drunk that she wanted to join Shari in taking a bath. The next day, Umine was too complacent to leave Shari alone and told her that she would visit her again. She wasn't worried about her sister that much anymore since it looked like she had everything together. Before leaving, Umine reminded Shari that she could always count on her big sister. If ever Shari was worried about anything that she couldn't tell her friends, she could always talk to Umine about it. As they said their goodbyes, Umine also told her sister to give her regards to Yumiji. She then drove off shortly after that. On the other hand, Yumiji was on the way to Shari's house when he saw a cool car coming from her place. Umine noticed him, so she stopped and called him. When Shiori was about to go into the house, she heard the voices of her sister and Yumiji talking outside the gate. Umine asked what Yumiji was doing around the place, and he told her that he was supposed to return something he borrowed from Shiori. Umine assumed that he was suddenly barging into a girl's home without contacting her, so she teased him. But in truth, Yumiji did make sure to contact Shiori beforehand. Shiori was interested in what Yumiji and Umine were saying, so she slowly went near the gate to listen to them. Umine thanked Yumiji for being a helper. As a big sister, she was actually worried about letting Shiori live alone. Her situation was different from how it has been until the present, and she has even grown so big. However, Shiori was more lively and had more fun than before. It was probably because Yumiji has been staying with her. Regardless of Chieri's appearance, she hasn't changed a bit from Shiori back then. Yumiji assured Umine that she shouldn't have to worry about anything since he always had Chieri's back. Umine was moved, so she hugged him and told him that he had become such a sweetie. Yumiji was caught off guard when Umine hugged him tightly. He clarified that he would stay by Chieri's side as a helper. Still, Umine was glad that her sister got someone like him. Summer came around, which was why it was extra hot that school day. It was cold just the other day, so no one expected the heat that day. Yumiji could never stand the heat. When it quickly got hot, his body couldn't keep up. However, Shiori loved the summer. She was always good with the heat, also because of the track, which made her used to the heat. Summer simply got Shiori going, along with all sorts of events to do, like festivals or the beach. She planned to take Yumiji around for the summer. She joked that maybe she would have him help her out a bunch and have him take her somewhere. However, Yumiji was not reacting the way Shiori wanted because of the heat. While they were walking, something fell on Yumiji's head. It was a cold compress on Shiori's thigh. Shiori glued hot compresses all over her body just to get even a little cooler. Her body does not come with a lot of issues. She joked about how she would explode when she got overheated. Yumiji was instantly worried and started to think of better ways to cool Shiori off. Because the heat, there was also a massive cloud column that even Shiori couldn't reach as big as she was. They were just staring at the sky, and when Yumiji glanced at Shiori, who was in awe of the sky, his cheeks turned red. She noticed that, so she teased him about where he was just looking. Yumiji stuttered, and no words came out of his mouth. Shiori then asked him what made him really feel summer. She asked if it was the huge cloud column, the cicada cries, the heat, or the summer version of Shiori. It was a manga-ish line, and she was proud that she nailed it. Yumiji didn't show any reaction though. Shortly after, they both parted ways as they went home. When Yumiji was about to go to bed, he received a text message from Shiori. She thought of a good way to cool off from the heat. Amidst scorching sun and an unblemished blue sky, their enthusiasm propelled them to prepare the pool for a revitalizing plunge. Hina skillfully handled the hose, reassuring Yumiji that everything was under control, easing his worries. Meanwhile, Shiori, susceptible to overheating, yearned for respite from the blistering heat. Over time, perspiration formed on Hina's brow, compelling her to exclaim about the insufferable temperatures. Unfazed by the sweltering weather, Tsukino radiated happiness while diligently mopping the now empty pool behind her. Grateful, Yumiji thanked Hina and Tsukino for their help in cleaning the pool. Hina mentioned their conversation with teacher Sudo, explaining the condition of cleaning before pool usage. With a mischievous look, Hina playfully teased Shiori, praising her alluring presence, much to Shiori's chagrin. Laughter erupted as Hina joyfully chased after Shiori, initiating a spirited chase between the two. Watching their playful antics, Yumiji pondered the situation. Recognizing Shiori's maturity, he concluded that their current team was efficient enough to clean the pool quickly. Nevertheless, witnessing their jovial camaraderie sparked thoughts of inviting his male friends for added assistance. Interrupting his thoughts, Tsukino offered Yumiji a bottle of water, assuring him to worry less. She pointed out Shiori's evident enjoyment, emphasizing its deeper meaning. Yumiji explained Shiori's desire for normalcy, to which Tsukino emphasized that Shiori's happiness was paramount. With a playful tease, Tsukino hinted that Yumiji's presence may have contributed to Shiori's heightened body temperature, leaving Yumiji curious and seeking further explanation. Amidst their endeavors, Hina inquired why Shiori didn't opt for the public pool downtown. Shiori confessed feeling embarrassed and standing out unfavorably. Agreeing, Hina playfully remarked on Shiori's attention-grabbing physique. Shiori clarified that Hina referred to her height, not her body. Hina later mentioned to Shiori that her popularity often attracted unwanted attention, stating that anyone who would leave her wasn't worthy of being called a guy. Meanwhile, Tsukino playfully pushed Yumiji towards Shiori, making him anxious. To his surprise, Tsukino and Hina began touching his body, leaving him both nervous and taken aback. Observing their playful interaction, Shiori gazed at them and playfully sprayed water from the hose, subtly expressing a hint of jealousy. Quickly, she apologized, attributing it to an accidental slip of her hand. In response, the three girls embraced the playful atmosphere, splashing water all around and engaging in carefree water play. Shiori, captivated by their playfulness, sprayed water from the hose, showing a hint of jealousy. Apologizing for an accidental slip, she quickly joined the others in a carefree water. Subsequently, the girls playfully threw things at Yumiji, labeling him a pervert for the earlier incident. Feeling ostracized, he retreated to the stairs, distancing himself from the group. Seeking solace, Yumiji improvised by lifting the mop like a dumbbell. Witnessing this, Shari found his self-consciousness endearing, remarking on his cuteness. Yumiji, flustered, insisted it wasn't about that, but assured her of his willingness to support her through any troubles. Blushing, Shari gazed at Yumiji. They resumed their pool cleaning duties, acknowledging that their playful antics had prolonged the process more than expected. They started fighting, splashing, and laughing together. At the pool, as Shari changed in the dressing room, numerous girls, including Hina and Tsukino, showcased their bathing suits. They congregated together, eagerly awaiting Shari's arrival. Hina remarked to Tsukino about the visually pleasing sight, appreciating how everyone had great bodies. Grateful for the compliment, Tsukino received Hina's words, although Hina clarified it was more of a metaphor, extending the compliment to everyone. Hina also admitted that Tsukino had a commendable figure. Soon after, they proceeded towards the pool area. Shortly after, Shari joined the group, offering her apologies for making them wait. Later, in the classroom, Shari engaged in conversation with Yumiji, sharing her excitement about the swimming experience, exclaiming how much fun she had. She confessed that she was aware of the shallowness of the pool, which prevented her from swimming, but despite that, she genuinely enjoyed the company and playfulness of everyone at the pool. Yumiji was glad that Shari enjoyed the swimming, despite the shallow pool. Curious, Shari asked about the boys' activities, to which Yumiji mentioned their basketball game. However, Shari expressed disappointment that their group, who would clean the pool, didn't get to use it first. Yumiji reassured her, explaining the timing didn't align with their plans due to the weather. Shari inquired if Saturday would be a suitable day, and Yumiji confirmed its convenience before excusing himself. Despite Shari's strong desire for Yumiji to join her in swimming, he declined her invitation, encouraging her to have a great time with Hina and Tsukino instead. Suddenly, someone sneaked up behind Yumiji, placing swimming goggles on him and questioning his reserved behavior. It turned out to be Hina, who enthusiastically shared how much fun she had at the pool with him. Shari's exuberant movements turned into a wave pool. Blushing and making a comical face, Shari listened while Yumiji, feeling overwhelmed, yelled and ran away. Teacher Sudo overheard their conversation and approached Yumiji, questioning if he was a poor swimmer. Yumiji, feeling embarrassed, found himself at a loss for words, leading Teacher Sudo to speculate that his swimming skills might be the reason behind his refusal to join the girls at the pool. Teacher Sudo pointed out that Yumiji and Shari had been close since childhood, implying that Shari would already be aware of his inability to swim. Yumiji agreed, stating that he was sure Shari knew about his swimming limitations, but he didn't want to reveal his vulnerable side to her. In response, Teacher Sudo offered advice, emphasizing that getting fixated on such trivial matters would hinder his progress. He assured Yumiji that Shari was not the type to judge him based on his swimming abilities. Meanwhile, Shari leaned on the window as she waited for Yumiji to come back. After all the talking, he finally accepted her invitation. They changed clothes and went swimming at night. During the evening at the pool, Yumiji and Shari found themselves alone together. Shari expressed her willingness to teach him how to swim, but Yumiji felt embarrassed, fearing potential teasing. Blushing and feeling a bit shy, Shari requested that he avoid direct eye contact, explaining that her swimsuit was both alluring and snug around the chest. Yumiji stretched his body while Shari assisted him. The dark pool at night made him uneasy, but Shari's bold jump into the water eased his fears. They began the swimming session, with Yumiji kicking too forcefully at first. Shari advised him to take calm and swift kicks instead. With her guidance, he eventually learned how to swim, feeling grateful for Shari's help. As they floated in the pool, Yumiji and Shari gazed at the twinkling stars above. Yumiji suggested that they visit the beach next time, where Shari could fully indulge in her love for swimming. Accepting his invitation, she playfully embraced him like a child. Meanwhile, a girl with long black twin-tailed hair resembling Shari caught their attention, adding an air of intrigue to the scene. Recapping their lesson, Shari showed Yumiji the proper technique of swift kicks. However, he accidentally swallowed water due to Shari's size, causing a splash. Worried, she asked if he was okay. Yumiji assured her he could be helped quickly if he drowned, given Shari's size. Playfully, she joked about CPR, mentioning that it felt more like being eaten due to her size. Amidst the air, the sound of whirring helicopters filled the scene, as they transported what appeared to be a large box. Inside the classroom, Teacher Sudo made an announcement to the students, revealing the upcoming Mixer event. The Mixer was a joint project with the Giant Girl Support Department, aimed at enhancing the student life of larger-bodied students like Shari, providing them with a more fulfilling experience. A student from another school made an unexpected visit. Soon after, a loud noise erupted from outside, catching everyone's attention. It was the arrival of another giant girl, similar to Shari, who had been transported by the 3 helicopters and made a grand jump, causing the commotion. The class was astonished to see another giant girl, as they had believed Shari was the only one. The newcomer approached Shari and complimented her cute face, but claimed her own face was even cuter. The sight of the 2 giant ladies left the entire class in awe. After being asked to introduce herself by Teacher Sudo, the new giant girl expressed her surprise that they were unaware of her name. With a smile, she began her introduction, stating, "I'm Nanami Nero, 11th grade." Shari was delighted to finally meet her, as she had only heard about her from the department. Nero explained that she was the reason Shari had a home, writing tools, and a uniform, and questioned why Shari had never inquired about it before. Shari acknowledged that it was indeed the department that had provided everything she needed. However, Nero clarified that it was because of her efforts, emphasizing that Shari should be grateful to her for acquiring the knowledge and expertise through trial and error. Shari was taken aback, realizing that she had been unaware of Nero's instrumental role. On the other hand, Yumiji realized the reason why they're quick to act and have so many things prepared. Nero bragged as she told Shari that she was the reason that her school life had no discomfort at all. She told her that she went through a lot of hardship at the start and how many odd looks she got. Nero couldn't help but wonder why Shari never questioned things and simply relied on being taken care of. Irritated, she urged Shari to express gratitude, and Shari genuinely appreciated her. Admiring Nero's abilities, Shari's innocent remark unintentionally irritated Nero, who was not easily swayed by Shari's apparent good nature. Meanwhile, Hina encouraged Yumiji to intervene and assist Shari, while Tsukino referred to Nero as Shari's helper. Yumiji stepped forward and approached Shari and Nero outside. Nero stared at him, questioning his identity and telling him to back off with the nickname Shorty Outsider Flea. Yumiji felt embarrassed but retorted that being compared to her would make anyone appear short. Shari intervened, introducing Yumiji as her childhood friend and helper. Nero inquired about the next course of action, to which Yumiji expressed his belief that Shari hadn't done anything wrong. As Nero observed them, she suddenly grabbed Yumiji, examining him as if he were a toy. Playfully, she commented that he was somewhat her type and placed him between her chest upside down, seemingly challenging Shari. It appeared that if Nero won, Yumiji would be hers. Nero, the sudden arrival of the giant girl, displayed a clear dislike towards Shari. In a bold move, Nero challenged Shari to a contest, with Yumiji unwittingly caught in the middle. Shari insisted that Yumiji had no part in it and should not be dragged into the situation. Curious about the nature of the contest, Nero admitted that she hadn't thought of one yet. Teacher Sudo suggested that the class write down contest ideas on a piece of paper and he would select one through a raffle. Eventually, the chosen contest turned out to be sumo wrestling. Filled with determination to prove herself, Nero was determined to win the match and establish her worth. Shari, on the other hand, was relieved that the contest wasn't an academic one and jokingly wished it had been an eating competition instead. The match commenced and the two girls fiercely pushed against each other amid a cheering crowd. The spectators rallied in support of Shari. Suddenly, Yumiji was unexpectedly flung from Nero's grasp, but fortunately, Nero managed to catch him again. The clash between the two towering figures persisted until Shari emerged victorious. As Shari prepared to claim her prize, which was to befriend Nero, she extended a helping hand to lift her defeated opponent from the ground. However, Nero, feeling embarrassed, slapped away Shari's hand and swiftly fled the scene. Meanwhile, Yumiji lay sprawled on the ground, facing downwards. Caught between Shari and Nero during their sumo match, Yumiji struggled for breath but found an unexpected sense of comfort. As he called out for help, his legs ended up on Shari's chest, evoking a wave of nostalgic warmth. Breaking free, he urged them to proceed without him, believing that true understanding can arise from unexpected encounters. From a young age, Nero thrived on attention and lived by the motto of giving her all. In the classroom, her speech impressed both the teacher and Shari, showcasing her proficiency not only in subjects like math and history, but also in English. Nero casually dismissed her achievements as a piece of cake and cautioned against speaking her name too freely. Nero perceived Shari's academic abilities as mediocre, noting her tendency to sleep in class, scatter her thoughts, and indulge in excessive eating. Curious about Shari's behavior, Nero approached Yumiji and questioned if Shari had always been like that. Yumiji explained the support department's policy of disclosing information about giant girls, revealing that Nero had experienced growth before Shari. Nero believed she deserved more attention due to her perceived superiority. Yumiji expressed that Shari was doing her best in her own way, despite Nero's negative judgment. He suggested that Nero should try understanding Shari's perspective. On their way home, Nero was taken aback when she witnessed Shari playing with children. Frustrated, Nero speculated if Shari's kind-hearted nature was merely a facade to gain popularity. Shari called out to Nero, who responded with a curt "what?" and urged Shari to stop using such a friendly tone. Shari inquired about Nero's residence and school. Nero revealed that she recently moved to the nearby town and attended a different school. Additionally, Nero mentioned that her house was constructed by the department based on her design plan, asking Shari if she found it cozy. Shari emphasized that despite her capabilities and independence, she still sought help from Yumiji. Nero, holding Shari with both hands, questioned why everyone liked Shari so much despite her constant reliance on others, while Nero herself had been striving hard to gain attention. Suddenly, the ground beneath them gave way due to their combined weight. As they were about to fall, Shari grabbed Nero's hand, but they ended up tumbling together. Shari asked Nero if she was alright, but instead of being upset, Nero burst into laughter upon seeing Shari's disheveled hair. Shari remarked that she finally saw Nero smile, which was even more adorable than her usual pout. Eventually, Nero got back on her feet and extended a helping hand to Shari. With a newfound camaraderie, Nero granted Shari permission to address her by her first name, signaling a growing bond between them. Nero expressed her determination to challenge Shari again in the future, vowing not to lose. Meanwhile, Yumiji pondered the possibilities of their friendship, hoping that Shari and Nero could cultivate a harmonious relationship. Late at night in the school restroom, Yumiji, Hina, and Tsukino called out to Hanako for a playmate, but received no response. Hina, feeling frightened, urged Tsukino that they should leave. Tsukino, however, believed they should thoroughly check everything, as it was their destiny as seekers of horror. Just as they were about to exit, Yumiji accidentally bumped into something, causing both him and Hina to scream in fear. To their surprise, it was Shari, who couldn't enter the Nero restroom. Earlier that night, they had broken into the school to explore ghost stories. Tsukino shared the 7 mysteries of the school, including the moving eyes of a portrait, the bouncing ball in the gym, the classic Hanako in the restroom, the moving anatomical model in the science room, the mirror on the staircase, the beast in the reference room, and the recently added long vacant seat. Hina expressed her annoyance at the whole situation, believing it to be foolish. Yumiji suggested that Tsukino seemed interested in such gossip, which Hina dismissed, stating that she wasn't a grade schooler. Tsukino noticed Hina's aversion to such topics, which only further irritated her as she waved her hands dismissively. Shari declined participating, admitting that she couldn't handle scary things either. However, Tsukino managed to persuade Shari by mentioning that Yumiji would be there, presenting an opportunity for them to get closer. Eventually, they all decided to join in. In the school hall, they walked with a flashlight, with Shari crawling behind due to her size. As they encountered the 4th mystery, nothing suspicious occurred. Moving on to the 5th mystery, Tsukino directed the flashlight towards the mirror, only to see their own reflections. Tsukino explained that they stood in front of the mirror at 4:44 a.m. It was supposedly project a vision of their death. Hina objected, not wanting to be there so late, but Tsukino revealed a trick. She used her analog watch to reverse the time in the mirror and waited for 5 seconds. Suddenly, Yumiji let out a startled yell as someone seemingly restrained him, but it turned out to be Shari, causing them both to scream. They proceeded to the reference room where the 6th mystery was said to occur. After some discussion, they opened the door to find someone with a muscular body emitting steam. Startled and frightened, they quickly fled the school, only to realize that the beast they had encountered was actually Teacher Pseudo. Tsukino then mentioned the 7th and final mystery, which involved the laughter of a mysterious man and a woman at the pool during nighttime. It was reported that the man couldn't swim and was being taught by the woman. Yumiji and Shari exchanged knowing glances and realized that they were the ones being referred to, causing them to smile. Yumiji escorted Shari home, and she thanked him for the company. She admitted being scared of scary things but felt relieved and relaxed at home. Yumiji comforted her by letting her feel his heartbeat, a childhood practice to calm her down. Curiously, Shari placed him near her ear to listen to his heartbeat. During their after-school study session, Yumiji tried to explain something to Shari, but she wasn't paying attention. In response, Yumiji lightly slapped her with the book to get her focus back. Startled, Shari opened her eyes to see Yumiji right in front of her. She couldn't help but wonder if there was some kind of curse affecting Yumiji to make him so serious in that moment. They decided to take a break, and Shari surprised Yumiji by bringing a basket full of cookies. She proudly declared that she had baked them herself the previous night, and offered them as a token of her gratitude. Shari reached for a cookie from the basket and attempted to feed it to Yumiji. However, she realized that the cookie was too big and difficult to eat. Curious about his concern, she inquired if it was due to the flavor, assuring him that it tasted delicious. Shari explained that she was simply repaying the favor from their previous bento exchange. She assured Yumiji that the cookie was not poisoned or anything of the sort, to which he exclaimed that wasn't his concern. Determined to continue their study session, Shari proposed that they proceed if he wasn't going to eat. Yumiji agreed, and she fed him the cookie while affectionately patting him on the head, reminiscent of a pet-owner interaction. Yumiji stared at Shari, his brow glistening with sweat, taken aback by her actions. Shari blushed and quickly apologized for her behavior, sensing that she might be heading in an unexpected direction. Nevertheless, she proceeded to take her final exam with Yumiji by her side for support. Afterward, Teacher Pseudo reviewed her question sheet, and was pleased to find that Shari had achieved a commendable grade.